Rain hammered the cracked asphalt of a small-town gas station in Georgia. The neon sign flickered open, half-lit, like a bad promise. Colonel Elijah Warren stood beside his old Ford, wearing a plain gray hoodie and jeans, hands steady as he refilled the tank. To anyone passing by, he looked like another tired black man on a long drive home. The cruiser rolled in slow blue lights off, arrogance on full display. Officer Trent Calloway stepped out, hand resting on his holster, a smirk already in place. "License and registration," he said before Elijah could even turn. "We got reports of a stolen vehicle matching this description." Elijah's jaw tightened. Same story, different day. He handed over the papers.com, deliberate. Calloway barely looked before tossing them back into the puddle at Elijah's feet. "You military?" Calloway sneered, eyeing the veteran's tag on the bumper. "Lemme guess. Dishonorable discharge." The rain dripped down Elijah's face. He said nothing. Silence was his last defense. Then Calloway leaned closer, voice venomous. "You people love playing hero till someone reminds you where you stand." Something inside Elijah cracked, not anger, but recognition. He'd heard this tone before. Afghanistan, Iraq, always from someone with a gun, and the wrong kind of authority. Drawn from inside the gas station, a teenager filmed on his phone. The red recording light blinked like a heartbeat. Elijah slowly reached into his back pocket, not for a weapon, but for something that would shatter Calloway's world. A military ID, one word stamped across the top. "Colonel." Calloway froze, but the damage was already done, and the world was watching. The rain didn't wash away what came next. The rain had been falling for hours, a steady hiss over the empty Georgia highway. Colonel Elijah Warren drove with both hands on the wheel, his knuckles pale from the chill that seeped through the cracked air vents. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not tonight. Not in this forgotten town with one gas station and a diner that closed before sunset. But the storm had pulled him off the interstate, and the low fuel light made the decision for him. The gas station sat beneath a flickering sign, Hawthorne's Fuel, and Mart. Old paint, rusted canopy, one attendant, half asleep behind glass. Elijah stepped out, hood up, keeping his movements slow and deliberate, the kind of habit born from experience, not fear. He'd been through checkpoints on foreign soil, but something about home always felt more dangerous. He was halfway through filling the tank when the cruiser rolled up. No siren, just the hum of authority. Officer Trent Calloway stepped out, tall, blonde, posture dripping with confidence that came from never being questioned. "Evenin'," Calloway said, voice flat, not friendly. "License and registration." Elijah blinked. "Excuse me, we got a bolo black male, dark hoodie, driving a Ford pickup. You matched the description." Elijah inhaled slowly, his breath fogging in the cold. "This truck's mine, officer. You can run the plate." Calloway ignored him, circling the truck like a predator. "You from around here?" "No. Siege unfigures." The word slid out like a slur dressed as small talk. Calloway glanced at the tags. "Military plates, huh? You serve 22 years. The officer smirked. "And what, they let you keep the car after they kicked you out?" Elijah's eyes met his steady, unflinching. "I retired with honors." Calloway chuckled. "Sure you did. Step aside." He pushed past, opening the passenger door without consent, rifling through Elijah's glove compartment. "Sir," Elijah said evenly, "you don't have cause for a search." Calloway turned. "I am the cause." The words hit harder than the rain. From inside the gas station, two young men watched, one with his phone raised discreetly, recording. Elijah could feel the lens on his back like heat. "Officer," he said carefully, "I've got nothing to hide." "Then you won't mind if I take a look under the seat. Please don't reach in my vehicle." Calloway's tone hardened. "Are you refusing a lawful order?" Elijah exhaled. "I'm refusing an unlawful one." Silence stretched. The rain grew louder. Calloway's hand brushed the grip of his sidearm. "Not pulling, just reminding. You got attitude for someone on the side of the road." "Maybe I've earned it," Elijah said softly. Calloway snorted. "You people always think you've earned something." That line, quiet, cruel, drew a hush over the scene. Even the teenager filming stopped breathing. Elijah straightened. The years of command returned to his posture, his voice. "Officer, I'm done talking." "Oh, you'll talk." Calloway stepped closer, close enough for Elijah to smell the bitter coffee on his breath. "You'll talk when I tell you to." For a long second, neither moved. Then Elijah bent down slow, deliberate, and reached into his back pocket. Calloway's hand twitched toward his gun. Don't you move. Elijah held up a single card, arms steady despite the tremor in his chest. The silence was absolute. Calloway stared, face draining of color. The teen's phone kept recording. Elijah's voice was low, measured. Now, Officer Calloway, do you still want to search my vehicle? The officer said nothing. The rain filled the space between them like applause from an unseen crowd. The boy filming whispered, "Oh damn." For the first time that night, Calloway looked unsure, but it was too late. The video had captured everything. The sneer, the slur, the truth, and tomorrow, the world would see it. The video hit the internet before sunrise. A 30-second clip, grainy, wet, lit by a trembling gas station sign, exploded across timelines like a grenade. The caption read, "Police officer humiliates black veteran. Watch till the end." By 6 a.m., it had over 2 million views. By noon, 10 million. The sound that carried it wasn't the rain, or even the officer's voice. It was the silence right before Elijah held up his ID. That breathless, stunned moment told the whole story. Inside his small home outside Augusta, Elijah Warren sat at the kitchen table, still wearing the same gray hoodie from last night. Denise, his wife, hovered by the counter, coffee untouched. She had watched the video twice. The second time she cried. "Elijah, it's everywhere," she said softly, sliding her phone toward him. CNN, ABC, even some British paper picked it up. He didn't touch it, didn't need to. "I didn't ask for this," he murmured. "I know, but now it's mine." Her eyes searched his face, weary, lined by years of service and sacrifice. "They're gonna twist it. You know that. They'll dig into everything you've ever done, every decision, every record." "I've been investigated before," he said quietly. "By the army, not by people who comment from couches." Denise exhaled shakily. "And the cop, he'll hide behind the badge. They always do." By midday, reporters began circling like vultures. A van from Channel 9 News parked across the street. Microphones appeared. So did the noise, questions, camera clicks, voices overlapping. "Elijah Warren, do you plan to press charges? Colonel, are you seeking legal action? Sir, do you believe this was racially motivated?" He closed the blinds. The house grew dim again, in a police department counties away. Officer Trent Calloway stared at his phone. His wife stood behind him, pale and silent. "This is edited," he muttered. "They cut parts out. They're twisting it." His wife didn't reply. He called his sergeant. It went to voicemail. Then the union rep. "Trent, listen," the voice on the line said. "Careful, clipped. Don't talk to the press. Don't post. Department's handling it internally." "What does that mean?" "It means, don't make it worse." He slammed the phone down. The rage curdled into panic. Across town. The department issued a statement on their Facebook page. "The Hawthorne County Police Department is aware of the circulating video. We are conducting an internal review. No further comments at this time." The comment section was a war zone. "Fire him, protect our veterans, stop defending thugs in uniform. He probably provoked the officer." By evening, the post had 100,000 reactions, half fury, half denial. Elijah turned off his phone. The noise online didn't sound like justice. It sounded like chaos. He walked into his study, where his medals hung on the wall. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Distinguished Service Cross. They looked dull in the dim light. Denise followed him quietly. "You should call someone," she said. "A lawyer, or maybe." He shook his head. "Not yet. You can't fight this alone." "I don't plan to." He stared at the medals, each one a memory of someone who didn't come home. "But if I speak, it has to mean something." "You already spoke," she whispered. "You just didn't mean to." That night, a reporter from the Washington Herald managed to get through the gate. She was young, nervous, and polite enough to stand in the rain. "Colonel Warren," she called, "please, just a comment. Anything." Elijah stepped out onto the porch, raincoat zip. He didn't raise his voice. "Ma'am, I don't have a comment. What happened is on video. What comes next isn't mine to decide." She hesitated. "The public wants to hear your side." He looked past her, toward the flashing cameras parked by the curb. They already did. He closed the door. At 2 a.m. he couldn't sleep. The glow from Denise's phone illuminated her worried face. She showed him a tweet. It had over 1 million likes. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't fight. He just showed who he was and who they were. Elijah said nothing. Denise turned off the screen and reached for his hand. "What if they come after you?" He smiled faintly. "They already did." Morning brought another storm, not of rain, but of consequence. Calloway was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The department doubled down, calling it standard procedure. Cable networks replayed the clip on a loop, each adding their own slant, racial profiling, or justified stop. Colonel versus Cop America divided again. Viral outrage in Hawthorne County. Elijah's old unit texted him, men from deployments past, calling him sir, even now. One message stood out. Proud of you, Colonel. You kept your dignity. Don't let them take it. He read it twice, then put the phone face down. By midday, someone leaked Calloway's record. Prior complaints, excessive force, racial remarks, traffic stops gone wrong, each one unsubstantiated. The internet did what it always did. Turned truth into weaponry. Hashtags trended. Brands posted statements. Politicians weighed in. Denise stood at the window, watching the crowd outside their home. This is getting too big, she whispered. They're turning it into something else. Elijah nodded slowly. That's what happens when the truth gets loose. Nobody controls where it goes. A long pause. What are you going to do? She asked. He stared at the rain streaking down the window. The same sound, the same rhythm, as that night. I'm going to remind them who I am, he said quietly, not who they think I am. That evening, a local radio host aired a live segment. The caller line lit up. It's about respect, said one voice. If he'd just cooperated. He did cooperate. Another snapped. He's a damn colonel. The host cleared his throat. Folks, let's keep it civil. Emotions are high, but maybe, just maybe, this is the conversation we need. Near midnight, Elijah sat alone in his den. The TV flickered with another replay of the video. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. The commentator's voice droned. Colonel Elijah Warren, a name now synonymous with restraint under pressure. He muted it. The silence was heavier than noise. Denise appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Still awake. Storm's not over, he said. Outside or inside? He managed a small, weary smile. Both. She came closer, setting a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. I did the only thing. The screen replayed the moment. Calloway sneered. You people love playing hero. Elijah turned the TV off. The rain outside began again. Steady as breath, he whispered, more to himself than anyone. Let them see what a real hero looks like. The Hawthorne County Police Department smelled of burnt coffee and disinfectant, the kind of sterile air meant to erase what happened inside. Officer Trent, Calloway walked through the back entrance, avoiding the main lobby where reporters pressed their faces to the glass. The whispers followed him down the hall. That's him, the video guy. Internal Affairs is here. He kept his head low, hands buried in his pockets. His badge felt heavier than usual, as if it knew something he didn't want to admit. When he reached the squad room, Sergeant Peters stood waiting by the bulletin board. The man's face was stiff, his voice a practiced calm. Close the door, Trent. Calloway obeyed, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. Peters folded his arms. You understand you're on administrative leave. Yeah, with pay, for now. Trent's jaw clenched. This is a witch hunt. The internet doesn't get to decide how I do my job. Peters sighed. That video says plenty. It doesn't show context. You threw his papers in a puddle. Trent, he had an attitude. He was a colonel. Peters snapped, the first crack in his tone, then, quieter. You realize how bad this looks for the department. Calloway's voice dropped. You, backing them now. I'm backing the badge, Peters said flatly. You'd better remember that. 2 doors down, Chief Randall was in a meeting with the city attorney and the public information officer. The blinds were drawn. Voices were low, deliberate. This could turn into a civil rights lawsuit, the attorney said. We need to protect the department. Meaning? Randall asked. Meaning distance, the PIA replied. Issue statements about transparency, training, accountability, but don't admit fault. And Calloway, contain him. Randall exhaled slowly. The union won't like that. The union doesn't run the department, the attorney smirked. They just think they do. Across town, Elijah Warren sat in the county building, waiting. He'd arrived early, out of habit. Soldiers were always early. The receptionist at the front desk had greeted him politely, but with the same brittle smile he'd seen in airports, respect laced with unease. Someone will be right with you, Colonel. Now he waited outside a small, windowless conference room, labeled Professional Standards Division. His hands were steady. His mind was not. When the door opened, 2 officers entered, one white, one black, both in suits. Colonel Warren, The white officer said, extending a hand. I'm Lieutenant Mason. This is Detective Harris. Internal Affairs. Elijah shook both hands. Mason gestured to the chair. We appreciate you coming in. I figured it was time to hear the department's side, Elijah replied. Harris opened a file. We're reviewing the video and conducting interviews. But these things take time. How much time? Depends on cooperation. Elijah leaned back, gaze steady. So far, all I've seen is silence. Harris hesitated. I can't speak for everyone, sir. But some of us are trying to do this right. Her voice was quiet, but sincere. He nodded. Then let's do it. For 2 hours, they went over every detail, time, location, sequence of events. Elijah's responses were calm, clipped, factual. Years of military discipline honed his words like steel. When it ended, Mason offered the practiced line, "We'll be in touch once the investigation concludes." Elijah stood. "And if it doesn't," Mason blinked. "Excuse me, if it doesn't conclude, if it gets buried under paperwork like all the others." A pause. Harris met his eyes, something unspoken passing between them, acknowledgement, maybe even guilt. "I'll find a way to make sure it doesn't," she said quietly. That evening, the department held a closed-door meeting. Reporters weren't allowed, cameras were banned. Chief Randall addressed the room. "We are under scrutiny. This video has gone national. I don't need to remind anyone what that means for our funding, our image, or our jobs." An officer in the back muttered, "Or for him." Randall's eyes cut to the sound. "Let me be clear. Officer Calloway's situation does not represent this department." "Then why is he still getting paid?" someone asked. "Because the union would riot if we didn't." Laughter, nervous, bitter, rippled through the room. "Listen," Randall continued, lowering his tone. "We've all had rough stops, but this isn't just another complaint. This is politics now, national attention, federal interest. Everyone in this room better keep their noses clean and mouths shut." He paused. "The public thinks we're the enemy. Don't prove them right." Meanwhile, in a nearby diner, 2 officers sat in a booth, whispering. "Think they'll fire him? Not a chance. They'll shuffle him somewhere quiet till this dies down. But the colonel, man, don't be naive. You know how it goes. Blue backs blue." The waitress poured coffee, pretending not to hear, but she'd already shared the video on her Facebook page. Back at home, Elijah watched the local news. A panel of pundits debated his dignity, his tone, his restraint, everything but the truth. One anchor said, "He's the ideal victim, educated, veteran.com. That's why it's gone viral." Elijah muted the TV. The word victim made his skin crawl. Denise entered with folded laundry. "They're calling you the Colonel of Calm now." He almost laughed. "They make slogans out of pain." She set the clothes down gently. "You can't control what people call you, but you can decide what you do next." He stared at the screen again, Calloway's face frozen mid-smirk. "I don't want fame," Elijah said. "I want accountability." "Then you'll have to fight their wall," she said. He looked at her. "The blue wall." She nodded. "Yeah, the one that keeps the truth out." The next day, Elijah drove back to the county building to deliver a written statement. In the parking lot, he spotted Detective Harris stepping out of her car. "Morning, Colonel," she greeted. "Detective," she lowered her voice. "Off the record, the department's circling wagons. Chief's getting pressure from the city to resolve this quietly, so they'll protect him, maybe. But not all of us are on board." He studied her face, tired but determined. "Why, tell me this," he asked. "Because you deserve to know what you're up against." He nodded slowly. "Then you deserve to know this. I've faced insurgents with less armor than that badge." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe you're the right man to breach it." That evening, Calloway sat alone in his truck, staring at the station from the parking lot. He wasn't allowed inside. His keycard had been disabled. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. "They're hanging me out to dry," he muttered on his phone. Messages from fellow officers poured in, some supportive, others silent. The silence hurt more. One text stood out. "Keep quiet. They'll forget soon. They always do." But Calloway knew they wouldn't. Not this time. The colonel's calm had made him look small, and humiliation burned deeper than guilt. He turned the key, drove off into the dark, headlights cutting through rain. In a quiet office at Internal Affairs, Harris opened a confidential folder. Inside were complaint records, dozens of them, all linked to Calloway. She scanned the dates. The same names appeared: supervisors, witnesses, victims, each marked unsubstantiated. She whispered to herself, How many did you bury, Sergeant Peters? She copied the files onto a flash drive, slipped it into her coat, and looked out the window. Outside, the rain fell again, steady, unrelenting. The same rain that had started it all. At home, Elijah watched the storm roll in from his porch. Lightning flashed, momentary and fierce. Denise joined him, wrapping her arm around his. They won't make it easy. They never do. He looked at the horizon, where thunder stitched the sky open. But walls fall, he said quietly. They always fall. The diner off Highway 78 hadn't changed in 20 years. Same cracked red booths, same smell of fried bacon and burnt coffee. The only new thing was the TV above the counter, replaying the viral clip on mute. Colonel Elijah Warren sat in the corner booth, cap low, nursing black coffee. The waitress recognized him, but didn't say a word. Small towns remembered faces better than they remembered. Kindness. The bell over the door jingled. Still drinking that mud you call coffee? Elijah looked up. Marcus Tate stood there, broad-shouldered, bearded, carrying the kind of calm that came only from surviving too much. Depends, Elijah said, standing to shake his hand. You still pretending you can cook ribs? Marcus laughed, the sound deep and grounding. Man, I mastered ribs. You just can't afford the gas to drive to make and to taste 'em. They sat, no small talk after that. Men who had bled on the same soil didn't need filler. Marcus nodded toward the screen above the counter. Hell of a thing, Eli. Never thought I'd see your face on national news. I didn't either. You kept your cool though. Most wouldn't have. Elijah shrugged. You learn quick in war. Control what you can, survive the rest. Marcus stirred his coffee, eyes thoughtful. That cop picked the wrong man to mess with. Doesn't feel like I won, Elijah muttered. Feels like I got drafted again. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Into what? A different kind of battlefield. The waitress brought pancakes. Neither of them had ordered, but Marcus nodded in thanks. She gave Elijah a quiet smile, the kind that said, I saw what they did to you. I'm sorry. He gave a polite nod back. That was how people apologized in America, not with words, but with gestures that never reached power. Marcus broke the silence. I saw that press statement they gave. Sounded like every one we've ever heard. We're investigating. We take this seriously. All smoke. Elijah grunted. They don't investigate the system. They are the system. You gonna let 'em bury it? Elijah looked down at his hands, the same ones that had held rifles, pulled brothers from wreckage, saluted coffins. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Marcus leaned in. You've already done something. You showed people. That video hit harder than speeches ever will. Elijah didn't answer. He watched the waitress refill coffee, watched a couple whisper as they recognized him. He could feel their eyes, the weight of sympathy and curiosity mixed like bad whiskey. People keep saying I handled it with dignity, Elijah said quietly, like that's the prize. Marcus frowned. Dignity's supposed to be a right, not a medal. They ate in silence for a while. The rain started again outside, tapping against the window like memory. Marcus broke it first. Remember Kandahar? The checkpoint. Elijah nodded slowly. I remember the boy with the vest. Yeah, you told me to hold fire till you were sure. Saved 10 lives that day. Elijah's eyes were distant. We were trained to see people before threats. Somewhere along the line, these cops stopped doing that. Marcus sighed. It's fear, Eli, fear and power. That's a bad marriage. You think fear makes a man cruel? No, Marcus said. Fear just gives him permission. Elijah leaned back, letting the words sink in. The air felt heavier than before. After breakfast, they walked out to the parking lot. Marcus lit a cigarette, offering one. Elijah declined. Marcus exhaled a long plume of smoke. You thinking about speaking out? Elijah hesitated. I've had reporters calling, politicians, too. They want me at rallies, on talk shows. They want a symbol, not a man. So give 'em both. Elijah shot him a look. You think this ends with justice? Marcus smiled without humor. Justice? No. Exposure? Maybe. That's the closest we get. Elijah rubbed his forehead. My wife's scared. Can't blame her. The threats are getting bolder. They'll bark louder before they back off. Always do. Yeah, Elijah murmured. That's what worries me. Marcus stepped closer, voice low. Listen, brother. You fought wars for this country. Don't let this country turn you into a ghost. Elijah met his eyes. I didn't survive gunfire to get killed by silence. That's the man I remember, Marcus said with a grin. They stood under the gray sky, the storm easing to drizzle. You know, Marcus said, flicking his cigarette away. My old man used to say, you can't clean a house you're afraid to walk into. Maybe it's time you walked into theirs. Elijah frowned, meaning, don't wait for their investigation. Hold your own. Speak. Use that platform before they use it for you. Elijah glanced at the wet pavement. His reflection shimmered. The soldier, the man, the target. And if I make things worse, Marcus shrugged. Then at least you'll know you tried. Ain't that what command taught us? Elijah smiled faintly. To lead, even when you're scared. Exactly. They said their goodbyes. Marcus clasped Elijah's shoulder. Firm, brotherly. Don't let them define your silence. Take care of yourself, old man. Always do, Marcus replied. But you, he pointed. You make em remember your name for the right reasons. Elijah watched him drive away, taillights fading into the mist. He stood there for a moment, feeling the cold air against his skin, the weight of the decision pressing in. He'd fought insurgents overseas. This fight was quieter, but it carried the same stakes: freedom, dignity, truth. He climbed into his truck, engine rumbling beneath him, and looked once more at the cloudy horizon. Somewhere inside him, something shifted, resolve replacing exhaustion. He whispered, no more silence. Then he pulled onto the road, heading toward home, toward the inevitable battle waiting beyond the next press call. The storm clouds trailed him, low and gray, as if the sky itself refused to forget. By the time Elijah Warren arrived at City Hall, the rain had stopped, but the storm hadn't. Satellite vans lined the curb, cables snaking through puddles. Reporters stood in clusters, holding microphones like weapons, their faces painted with anticipation. A dozen police cruisers guarded the entrance, lights spinning in nervous rhythm. Elijah parked his old Ford a block away. The engine coughed once before dying, as if it too wanted no part in what was coming. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, watching the building through the drizzle on his windshield. His reflection stared back, creased, weary, unwilling. His phone buzzed. It was Maya. Maya, they're ready for you. You don't have to do this. Elijah, I know. That's why I have to. He stepped out, tightening his coat against the wind. His shoes splashed in puddles as he walked toward the swarm. The front steps were chaos, shouted questions, flashing cameras, security yelling for order. Elijah kept his gaze forward, breathing slow, soldier-steady. Inside. The lobby was lined with metal detectors and uniforms. He passed through quietly. A few officers looked away. Others stared like they were seeing a ghost. A young press aide, nervous and pale, met him by the elevator. Colonel Warren, they're waiting upstairs. Mayor's office cleared a spot for you on the day. Yes. Elijah nodded. You got a minute? The aide blinked. Sir, before we start, who's really running this? The aide hesitated, then whispered, the chief's people. They want to make it look like they're cooperating. Yeah, Elijah muttered. That's what I thought. The conference room was hot with tension. Rows of reporters filled every seat, their cameras aimed at the long table, where city officials sat under bright lights. At the center, Police Chief Ronald Kirstefos, crisp uniform, jaw clenched tight. To his left sat Mayor Daniels, fidgeting with his tie. To his right, an empty chair with a placard that read, Colonel Elijah Warren. When Elijah entered, every head turned. The cameras flashed like gunfire. He took his seat. Kerr gave a curt nod. Colonel, Chief, let's keep this civil. Civility's never been my problem. Kerr's nostrils flared, but he said nothing. The mayor cleared his throat into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on short notice. We're here to address the recent incident involving our police department and Colonel Warren, a decorated veteran and member of this community. The room murmured. The cameras rolled. The mayor continued, voice trembling between sincerity and fear. First, I want to state that we value Colonel Warren's service. We've launched an internal review, and the officer involved has been placed on administrative leave. A reporter shouted, with pay or without. The mayor froze. The chief leaned forward, speaking for the first time, with PE pending investigation. The room erupted. Questions flew like debris in a storm. Elijah sat still, hands folded, jaw set. He could feel the room's energy, chaotic, hungry, performative, the same kind of noise that swallowed truth. When the shouting died down, he leaned toward the mic. May I? The mayor hesitated, then nodded. Of course, Colonel. The room fell quiet. Elijah's voice came low and steady. I didn't come here for apologies. I came here because people like me are tired of being turned into hashtats. Several reporters straightened. The chief shifted in his seat. I've been shot at overseas. I've buried men under flags. I've defended strangers I'll never meet. But nothing prepared me for being treated like an enemy in my own country. A hush spread. Even the cameras seemed to pause. I didn't resist that officer because I was scared. I didn't raise my voice because I knew exactly how it would be twisted. I stayed calm because I've seen how fast fear turns to violence when the man holding the gun sees your skin before your soul. The chief's jaw tightened. Elijah turned toward him. You talk about investigations, but we both know how this goes. You'll review the footage, release a statement, shuffle a few chairs, and call it reform. The chief leaned into his mic. Colonel, I understand your frustration, but no, you don't, Elijah interrupted. You understand damage control. Gasps rippled through the room. He continued, voice rising not with anger, but with conviction. You say you served the public. I did too, but when I wore a uniform, I was accountable for every bullet, every order, every mistake. My men died for that standard. Tell me, Chief, when was the last time one of your officers was held to the same? The chief didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Elijah, cold and calculating. The mayor shifted uncomfortably. Let's keep the discussion productive. This is productive, Elijah said, because the truth makes people uncomfortable before it makes them act. A few reporters clapped quietly before remembering they weren't supposed to. Elijah looked out over the crowd, at the cameras, at the sea of faces. I'm not here to tear down the police. I'm here to remind you what justice is supposed to look like. It's not public relations. It's not silence. It's accountability. If a soldier kills a civilian, he answers for it. If an officer does, we call it procedure. His voice softened. That's not safety. That's fear with a badge. The chief finally spoke. You're painting with a broad brush, Colonel. Most of my officers put their lives on the line every day. So did mine. Elijah cut in. But the difference is, we didn't get to choose who we saw as the enemy. The room went still again. Elijah leaned back. You want to fix your department. Start by seeing the people you serve as people. Start by firing those who forgot what that means. He stood up slowly. The mayor looked panicked, unsure if the event was over or if he'd just lost control of it. Elijah adjusted his jacket. You can keep your investigation. I'll keep my integrity. With that, he walked off the dais. Cameras followed, reporters shouting questions. Colonel, are you planning legal action? Do you feel safe? Will you run for office? He didn't answer. He walked through the chaos like a man walking through battlefield, smoke eyes forward, steps steady, ears tuned only to his heartbeat. Outside, the crowd had gathered activists, veterans, students, neighbors. When they saw him emerge, a cheer broke out. Elijah stopped on the steps, surprised by the sound. Dozens of signs lifted. Justice for Warren, accountability now, no more silence. He raised a hand. The noise softened to a hush. I didn't come here to be a hero, he said, his voice echoing through the street. I came here to tell the truth. What happens next, that's up to you. The crowd erupted again, louder this time, raw, electric, defiant. Elijah felt something shift deep inside him. Not victory, something heavier, older, purposed. He looked up at the gray sky, the clouds breaking just enough for a shaft of sunlight to hit the courthouse steps. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to breathe. The war wasn't over, but at least, now, it had a witness. The morning after the press conference, Elijah woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside his window. He sat up slowly, his back stiff, the remnants of uneasy sleep clinging to him. Through the curtain, he saw a dark sedan parked across the street, windows tinted, engine idling. It wasn't the first one. He stood still for a long moment, heartbeat in his throat. Then he turned away, refusing to give them the satisfaction of watching him watch them. The world had seen his face last night, his calm defiance, his challenge to the chief. The video had gone viral before dawn, but fame wasn't armor. It was a target. The coffee pot hissed. The smell of burnt grounds filled the small kitchen. Maya arrived minutes later, bursting through the back door without knocking. You need to see this. She set her phone on the table. The screen showed a news clip, his speech replaying on repeat. Beneath it, the Chiron scrolled. Police under fire after racism. Accusation by black veteran. But the comments told another story. Bet he staged it for attention. Another angry vet, trying to cash in. Should have just complied. Elijah looked away. Doesn't take long, does it? Maya's voice trembled. They're spinning it already. The department leaked your service record. They're saying you had a disciplinary hearing overseas. That hearing was cleared. They know that They don't care, she snapped. They just need doubt. Elijah rubbed his temples. Let them talk. I told the truth. That's enough. Maya slammed her hand on the counter. No, it's not enough. They're turning you into the problem, Elijah. He didn't respond. He just stared at the wallet, the photo of him and his unit in Afghanistan, dust-streaked, smiling. Every man in that frame trusted him to protect them. He'd done it then. Why did it feel impossible now? By noon, the retaliation began. The first call came from the contractor who'd been hiring him part-time. Sorry, Colonel, just business. Clients are nervous, you understand. He did. The second came from the landlord. Some tenants feel unsafe with all the attention. Maybe it's best if you find another place by the end of the month. He understood that too. The third came from a number he didn't recognize. When he answered, the voice was low, mocking. Still feeling brave, hero. Click. Silence. He stood in the middle of his kitchen, phone heavy in his hand. A hollow ache spread through his chest. Not fear. Exactly. Something older. The familiar taste of betrayal. That evening, the sedan was still there. Elijah stepped out onto the porch, arms crossed. The air smelled like wet asphalt and exhaust. He called out, "You boys planning to sit there all night?" No response. Just the steady hum of the idling engine. He smiled bitterly. Thought so. He turned back toward the door just as his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Careful who you talk to next time, Colonel. Not everyone's buying the act. He stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. The next day, the local paper ran an op-ed by a retired officer titled, "When Heroes Become Hostile." The article questioned his mental stability, cited unconfirmed reports about anger issues during his service, and accused him of tarnishing the badge for personal glory. Maya called him in tears. "We can fight this, Elijah. I'll draft a statement." "No," he said quietly. "Let them write. Every word they print tells on them, not me. But it's working. People are pulling their support. Even the veterans group's gone silent." He paused. "You ever notice how quick people are to doubt what they can't imagine?" She sighed. "And how long they cling to what makes them comfortable." Later that afternoon, Elijah met his lawyer, Denise Tran, at a small diner outside town. The blinds were half shut, the air thick with coffee and fried grease. She slid a stack of papers across the table. "They've started internal proceedings. Kerr's office is claiming you endangered officers by escalating tension during a lawful stop." Elijah stared at the words, jaw tightening. "Lawful stop. They're using the old playbook," she said. "Flip the script before it's written. They're hoping you'll back off once they smear your name enough." He leaned back, silent. Denise lowered her voice. "You have to understand they're scared. The footage, your speech, it shook them. The only weapon they've got left is your reputation." "Then I'll make them choke on it," he said quietly. She studied him. "You sure you want to keep going? They'll dig until there's nothing left untouched." He met her gaze. "If I stop now, they win. And if they can do this to me, a colonel, what chance does anyone else have?" Denise nodded slowly. "Then we fight." That night, Elijah couldn't sleep. The hum of the sedan outside had become part of the darkness. He sat by the window, watching its headlights flicker faintly through the rain. On the TV, the news replayed his press conference, now cut with ominous music, selective quotes, and a smug anchor saying, "Some question whether the colonel's story holds up under scrutiny." He turned it off. The silence pressed in. For a moment, he thought of calling someone, Maya, Denise, anyone, but he knew what they'd say. Stay calm. Don't give them a reason. He'd spent a lifetime staying calm. He stood, walked to the porch, and opened the door. The night air was sharp. He walked halfway down the steps and stared at the car. "You want to watch," he said softly. "Then watch. But I'm not hiding." For a long time, no movement. Then the headlights flicked off. The car rolled away, silent, disappearing down the block. Elijah exhaled, long and slow. The victory was small, but it was his. The following morning, the retaliation reached its peak. A breaking news alert flashed across every major channel. Colonel Elijah Warren, under investigation for misconduct during military service. The words hit like a punch. Maya called instantly. "They dug up the old inquiry, the one that cleared you. They're saying you covered up civilian deaths overseas." He closed his eyes. "They just weaponized my silence. What are you going to do?" He hesitated, then, "Tell the truth again, louder." That afternoon, he held his own press briefing, this time outside the community center. No podium, No officials, just him, a handful of supporters, and a crowd of reporters smelling blood. He began without notes. They can take my job, my house, my peace, but they can't take what's real. That file they're waving around. I faced that inquiry years ago. I cleared it because I told the truth then, too. A reporter called out, "So you deny any wrongdoing?" "I don't deny mistakes," Elijah said. "I deny lies. I've seen what happens when power hides behind procedure. I'm not hiding for them, or from them." His voice hardened. "The same system that tried to erase me from the road last week is trying to erase me from history now, but I'm still here." The crowd murmured. The conviction in his voice cut through the static. "Let them dig," he said finally. "All they'll find is the same man they tried to break." As he stepped down from the mic, Maya caught up with him, breathless. "They won't stop. I know they're going to hit harder. I know. So what do we do?" He looked past her to the people still gathered, some cheering, some recording, some just watching. "We make it hurt for them to lie," he said quietly. "Every time they twist the truth, we show the world what it looks like straightened." Maya nodded slowly. "Then, let's start tonight." That evening, Elijah opened his laptop and began uploading his service records, every commendation, every clearance, every letter from the Pentagon, acknowledging his integrity. Within hours, veterans across the country began sharing his story. Soldiers he hadn't seen in years posted photos, memories, testimonies. By midnight, #StandWithWarren was trending again, this time louder than before. The retaliation had backfired, but Elijah knew better than to celebrate, because power, once threatened, doesn't retreat, it reloads. And somewhere, in an office thick with cigar smoke and silence, Chief Kerr was watching the same screen, his face a mask of control cracking at the edges. He turned to his deputy. "If he wants war," Kerr said coldly, "we'll give him one." The morning sun cut through a haze of sirens. Elijah's street, once quiet, was crawling with police. 2 patrol cars blocked the intersection, their lights spinning slow and steady, painting his house in alternating red and blue. Neighbors stood on porches, whispering, filming. He stepped outside slowly, hands visible, heart pounding. "Colonel Elijah Warren," one officer called, voice flat, rehearsed. "Yes, you're being served with a search warrant." "For what?" "Unlawful possession of a firearm." Elijah blinked. "You've got to be kidding me." The officer didn't smile. "Step aside, sir." Maya appeared at the end of the street, sprinting toward them. "You can't just tease a veteran. You know this is retaliation." The officer ignored her. "Another read off the warrant." 2 more pushed past Elijah, entering the house like it was hostile ground. He didn't resist, just stood there, staring at the chief's signature stamped across the paper. The trap had sprung. Inside, drawers were yanked open, furniture overturned. The officers moved with calculated indifference, documenting everything. Elijah stood by the wall, fists clenched, breathing through his teeth. "You're wasting your time," he said quietly. One of the younger officers glanced at him, uneasy. "Just following orders, sir. That's what they all say." From the hallway came a shout. "Got something?" An officer emerged holding a pistol in a clear evidence bag. Elijah's face drained of color. "That's not mine." The officer shrugged. "It was found in your closet." Maya's voice cracked. "That's a setup. He doesn't even own a handgun." The senior officer turned to her. "Ma'am, please step back." "No, you listen to me," she shouted. "You people are planting Elijah." The officer interrupted coldly. "You're under arrest for illegal possession of an unregistered firearm." He felt the metal bite his wrists before he even processed the words. The patrol car door slammed shut behind him. From the back seat, Elijah watched his home fade away through the rain-specked glass. The officers' voices were muffled, the radio crackling static. He felt no anger, just a deep, hollow ache. He'd faced mortifier and loss, but this was betrayal, wrapped in procedure. At the precinct, they led him through the back entrance to avoid the press. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, harsh and clinical. A desk sergeant looked up, smirk tugging at his mouth. "So this is the colonel, huh?" Elijah said nothing. The officer guiding him chuckled. "Guess the rules don't mean much when it's your turn." They took his fingerprints, his belt, his phone. His name became a number. His service record meant nothing here. When they finally put him in a holding cell, the door clanged shut with a sound that echoed longer than it should have. He sat on the metal bench, staring at the concrete wall. In that silence, he understood what they were doing. Not just breaking his reputation, breaking him. Hours passed. when the door finally opened. It wasn't an officer. It was Denise, his lawyer. Her face was pale but fierce. "They had a judge sign off on this," she said, dropping a folder onto the bench. "And get this serial number on that gun traces back to a weapon used in a traffic stop 6 months ago. Case linked to a suspect who disappeared." Elijah frowned. "So they planted a gun tied to another case." "Exactly. It's dirty, but it's smart. They're making you look dangerous." He rubbed his temples. "How long do they think they can keep this up?" "As long as you're quiet," she said. "They're betting you'll give up before they do." He looked up. "Then they're betting wrong." Denise leaned closer. "I can get you out tonight. Bail's steep, but the veteran funds stepping in." He nodded. "Good." She hesitated. "Elijah, they're trying to provoke you. Don't give them a single frame they can twist." He smiled faintly. "I've been fighting men like this my whole life. They just wear better suits now." He was released after midnight. The air outside the station was cool and damp. Maya waited by the curb, eyes red but resolute. When she saw him, she ran forward and hugged him tightly. "They can't keep getting away with this," she whispered. "They won't," he said softly, "but they'll try." He looked across the street and froze. A group of men stood by a truck, watching. Off-duty cops, their faces blank, unreadable. One of them, tall, broad, the same one from the night of the stop, smirked and raised 2 fingers in a mock salute. Elijah's jaw tightened. "Stay calm," he muttered to himself. But inside, something cracked. The next morning, the media was everywhere. Headlines screamed, "Warren arrested. The hero with a secret, from soldier to suspect." Cable hosts dissected his expression, tone, posture. Pundits debated whether he had an authority problem. Every word was poison disguised as analysis. Maya scrolled through her phone in disbelief. "They're calling it proof. Proof that you're unstable." Elijah didn't answer. He stood by the window, watching 2 patrol cars cruise slowly past. "I spent years fighting for a country that told me to be patient," he murmured. "Now patience is the leash they're pulling." Maya turned to him, then cut it. He looked at her, startled. She continued, voice shaking but firm. "You told the truth. They answered with lies. It's time to stop playing defense." "How?" She grabbed her laptop. "By showing them what power looks like when it doesn't flinch." That afternoon, Maya uploaded the police body cam footage, the original, unedited version. It showed everything: the smirk on the officer's face, the hand on the gun, the mock salute when Elijah identified himself. It showed the humiliation, the restraint, the calm fury in Elijah's voice when he said, "I served this country longer than you've been alive." Within hours, it exploded online. Millions watched. Hashtags surged. Protests reignited. Even some officers, privately, messaged their support, and in the middle of it all, Chief Kerr stood behind his podium at a hastily arranged press conference, face stiff, tone clipped. "The footage does not represent the department's values," he said, every word rehearsed. "However, we urge the public to avoid rushing to judgment while the investigation continues." It was a plea disguised as control, but the tide had turned. Morning came like a bruise, dull, aching, purple at the edges. Elijah hadn't slept. He sat in the living room, staring at the shattered window now patched with cardboard and duct tape. The bricks sat on the coffee table, a crude monument to cowardice. Maya emerged from the kitchen with a mug of coffee. "You should rest," she said softly. He shook his head. "Not until this ends. Then it's going to be a long fight." He looked up at her, eyes red but clear. "You don't leave a fight half won." She sat across from him, pulling out her laptop. "Good, because we're about to make them choke on their lies." The video had already gone viral, but Maya wasn't done. She'd spent the night digging metadata, badge numbers, times. Every frame of bodycam footage became a weapon. "Look at this," she said, turning the screen toward him. "The timestamp from Officer Geller's footage doesn't match his report. He claimed you were uncooperative for 12 minutes. The camera shows he drew his weapon 40 seconds after you said your name." Elijah leaned in. "So the report was falsified." "Exactly. And if one report is fake, they all are." She opened another tab. "I've got a contact at the Ledger. They're ready to publish an expose, but they want confirmation that this goes higher than just those officers." He exhaled. "It does. The chief signed my search warrant. He approved that gun being planted." "Do you have proof?" Elijah reached for a folder beside him, the one Denise had smuggled out from the evidence room. Inside were copies of internal memos. One with the chief's signature authorizing a rapid response containment of reputational risk. Maya read the phrase out loud, jaw tightening. Reputational risk. They're calling you a PR problem. That's all I ever was to them. She closed the laptop. Then let's make them the risk. By noon, the story broke. The Ledger headline hit like a detonation. Evidence planted, reports falsified. Inside the blue wall of retaliation, screens everywhere lit up with Elijah's face. Not the mugshot the police had leaked, but a photograph of him in uniform, standing tall, eyes steady. Cable anchors debated corruption. Podcasts dissected the chain of command. Anonymous officers began leaking statements. Warren was targeted for speaking up. The chief wanted him silenced. By evening, protesters filled the streets again, signs flashing in the glow of police floodlights. Honor our veterans. Justice for Elijah Warren. Break the wall. The city was roaring now, and for the first time, the roar wasn't against him. Inside the precinct, chaos reigned. Chief Kerr slammed his office door and threw the newspaper across his desk. Who the hell leaked this? Captain Morales stood rigid. Sir, it's everywhere. The footage, the documents, someone had access to internal archives. Kerr's voice was a growl. Shut it down. With respect, Chief, we can't. The city council's demanding an emergency hearing. The mayor's office. I don't care about the mayor. Kerr snapped. I want control of this narrative before it buries me. But even as he barked orders, his phone buzzed with messages he couldn't ignore. Do not contact us further. Legal reviewing, exposure risk, union refusing to defend actions pending audit. The machine was eating its own tail. He sank into his chair, eyes darting to the photo on his wall himself, shaking hands with a senator at a charity gala. The caption beneath read, Integrity in Leadership. For the first time in 20 years, he didn't believe his own myth. At home, Elisha watched the news coverage in silence. Denise was there now, pacing the living room, her phone glued to her ear. They're panicking, she said after hanging up. City Council's calling an independent review. Internal Affairs wants a statement. The department's union just distanced itself from Kerr. Elijah nodded slowly. That means they're going to sacrifice someone. Probably Geller, Maya said bitterly. The lowest rung always burns first. Let them burn, Denise said, her lawyer's tone cutting. Once they start blaming each other, the truth will surface on its own. But Elijah didn't look satisfied. I don't want just the truth. I want accountability. Then we take it public, Maya said. You speak, live, no editing, no filters. Tell them what they did. He hesitated. If I go on air, they'll come harder. They'll dig deeper. They already have, she said. Now they'll have to face you, not just your shadow. He looked out the window at the city lights flickering beneath the rain, and nodded. Then let's expose them in daylight. The next morning, Elijah stood before a camera crew in Maya's living room. A local station had offered a live interview, uncut, no network scripts, no producer spin. The reporter adjusted her mic. Whenever you're ready, Colonel. Now. The red light blinked on. Elijah Warren, he began, voice steady. Served the country for 22 years. I led men to war. I buried friends who believed in the promise of justice. He paused. Field and always overseas. Sometimes your own neighborhood. Sometimes the people who swore to protect you become the ones who target you for telling the truth. He leaned forward. They planted evidence. They lied under oath. They tried to destroy my life. As I dared to call out what they call standard procedure. He glanced at the camera, eyes unflinching. To every officer watching this, the universe won't make you righteous. Your choice. If you protect corruption, you're part of it. And to every citizen, don't wait for a body cam to prove what you already know. Silence hung heavy when he finished. The reporter swallowed hard. Colonel Warren, do you fear for your safety? He smiled faintly. It has never stopped me before. The interview started the first video. Hours. Elijah's speech was everywhere. Clipped, shared, subtitled in different languages. News outlets called it speech that cracked silence. Not everyone was celebrating. Late that night, Denise called Elijah. Listen carefully. Internal Affairs just raided the precinct. They found missing files. Body cams were lost during her arrest. Kerr's name is on half the authorizations. Elijah exhaled slowly. So it's coming apart. Yes, but also dangerous. Desperate. Kerr's going quietly. Then I won't either. At that same hour, Chief Kerr sat in his office alone. The building eerily silent. The lights were off except for his desk lamp. His phone vibrated again. Another message from an unknown number. You're done. resign, or be expelled. He crushed the phone in his hand, screen cracking with his grip. His reflection in the window looked like a stranger, a man out, stripped of authority, cornered by the truth. Warren, he whispered, like a curse. You think you've won? He reached into his drawer, pulled out a flask, and drank. The liquid burned, but not enough to wash away the fear. Outside, the rain turned to a storm by dawn. Woke breaking news in PHIEF. Investigation for evidence tampering. Officers suspended. Review. Whistleblower veteran cleared of all. The tide had turned. Completely. My the headlines aloud, laughing through tears. You actually did it. Elijah didn't smile. He just said the words cleared of all charges for a long moment. Justice, he said finally, isn't victory. Just the beginning of peace. He placed a hand on his arm. What now? He looked at her, tired but resolute. Now we make sure it never happens again. That evening, as the storm cleared, Elijah returned to the construction site where it had all started. The crew had put up a new sign, opening under new management. He walked through the empty yard, boots crunching against the gravel, and the spot where the officers once mocked him. The wind carried the faint huff of traffic, the smell of wet cement. He stood there, breathing in the silence, not victory, not relief, but something deeper. Freedom. In a city, still divided. The truth had finally found its voice, and Elijah Warren, the soldier they tried to bury in lies, had become the man who made the walls fall. Morning came like a bruise, dull, aching, purple at the edges. Elijah hadn't slept. He sat in the living room, staring at the shattered window now patched with cardboard and duct tape. The brick sat on the coffee table, a crude monument to cowardice. Maya emerged from the kitchen with a mug of coffee. You should rest, she said softly. He shook his head. Not until this ends. Then it's going to be a long fight. He looked up at her, eyes red but clear. You don't leave a fight half won. She sat across from him, pulling out her laptop. Good, because we're about to make them choke on their lies. The video had already gone viral, but Maya wasn't done. She'd spent the night digging metadata, badge numbers, times. Every frame of bodycam footage became a weapon. Look at this, she said, turning the screen toward him. The timestamp from Officer Geller's footage doesn't match his report. He claimed you were uncooperative for 12 minutes. The camera shows he drew his weapon 40 seconds after you said your name. Elijah leaned in. So the report was falsified. Exactly. And if one report is fake, they all are. She opened another tab. I've got a contact at the Ledger. They're ready to publish an expose, but they want confirmation that this goes higher than just those officers. He exhaled. It does. The chief signed my search warrant. He approved that gun being planted. Do you have proof? Elijah reached for a folder beside him, the one Denise had smuggled out from the evidence room. Inside were copies of internal memos. One with the chief's signature authorizing a rapid response containment of reputational risk. Maya read the phrase out loud, jaw tightening. Reputational risk. They're calling you a PR problem. That's all I ever was to them. She closed the laptop. Then let's make them the risk. By noon, the story broke. The Ledger headline hit like a detonation. Evidence planted. Reports falsified. Inside the blue wall of retaliation. Screens everywhere lit up with Elijah's face. Not the mugshot the police had leaked, but a photograph of him in uniform, standing tall. Eyes steady. Cable anchors debated corruption. Podcasts dissected the chain of command. Anonymous officers began leaking statements. Warren was targeted for speaking up. The chief wanted him silenced. By evening, protesters filled the streets again, signs flashing in the glow of police floodlights. Honor our veterans. Justice for Elijah Warren. Break the wall. The city was roaring now, and for the first time, the roar wasn't against him. Inside the precinct, chaos reigned. Chief Kerr slammed his office door and threw the newspaper across his desk. Who the hell leaked this? Captain Morales stood rigid. Sir, it's everywhere. The footage, the documents, someone had access to internal archives. Kerr's voice was a growl. Shut it down. With respect, Chief, we can't. The city council's demanding an emergency hearing. The mayor's office. I don't care about the mayor. Kerr snapped. I want control of this narrative before it buries me. But even as he barked orders, his phone buzzed with messages he couldn't ignore. Do not contact us further. Legal reviewing exposure risk. Union refusing to defend actions pending audit. The machine was eating its own tail. He sank into his chair, eyes darting to the photo on his wall himself, shaking hands with a senator at a charity gala. The caption beneath read, "Integrity in Leadership." For the first time in 20 years, he didn't believe his own myth. Home. Elijah watched the news coverage in silence. Denise was there now, pacing the living room, her phone glued to her ear. "They're panicking," she said after hanging up. "City Council's calling an independent review. Internal Affairs wants a statement." The department's union just distanced itself from Kerr. Elijah nodded slowly. "That means they're going to sacrifice someone. Probably Jeller," Maya said bitterly. "The lowest rung always burns first." "Let them burn," Denise said, her lawyer's tone cutting. "Once they start blaming each other, the truth will surface on its own." But Elijah didn't look satisfied. "I don't want just the truth. I want accountability." "Then we take it public," Maya said. "You speak live. No editing, no filters. Tell them what they did." He hesitated. "If I go on air, they'll come harder. They'll dig deeper." "They already have," she said. "Now, they'll have to face you, not just your shadow." He looked out the window at the city lights flickering beneath the rain, and nodded. "Then let's expose them in daylight." The next morning, Elijah stood before a camera crew in Maya's living room. A local station had offered a live interview, uncut, no network scripts, no producer spin. The reporter adjusted her mic. "Whenever you're ready, Colonel." He nodded, but the red light blinked on. "Elijah Warren," he began, voice steady, "served this country for 22 years. I led men through to wars. I buried friends who believed in the promise of justice." He paused. "But the battlefield isn't always overseas. Sometimes it's in your own neighborhood. Sometimes the people who swore to protect you become the ones who target you for telling the truth." He leaned forward. "They planted evidence. They lied under oath. They tried to destroy my life because I dared to call out what they call standard procedure." He glanced at the camera, eyes unflinching. "To every officer watching this, the uniform doesn't make you righteous. Your choices do. If you protect corruption, you're part of it. And to every citizen, don't wait for another body cam to prove what you already know." Silence hung heavy when he finished. The reporter swallowed hard. "Colonel Warren, do you fear for your safety?" He smiled faintly. "Fears never stopped me before." The interview spread faster than the first video. Within hours, Elijah's speech was everywhere. Clipped, shared, subtitled in different languages. News outlets called it the speech that cracked the silence. But not everyone was celebrating. Late that night, Denise called him. "Elijah, listen carefully. Internal Affairs just raided the precinct. They found missing files, body cams that were lost during your arrest. Kerr's name is on half the authorizations." Elijah exhaled slowly. "So it's finally coming apart." "Yes, but it's also dangerous. They're desperate. Kerr's not going quietly. Then I won't either." At that same hour, Chief Kerr sat in his office alone, the building eerily silent. The lights were off except for his desk lamp. His phone vibrated again. Another message from an unknown number. "You're done. Resign or be exposed." He crushed the phone in his hand, the screen cracking beneath his grip. His reflection in the window looked like a stranger, a man out of control, stripped of authority, cornered by the truth. "Warren," he whispered, like a curse. "You think you've won." He reached into his drawer, pulled out a flask, and drank deep. The liquor burned, but not enough to wash away the fear. Outside, the rain turned into a storm. By dawn, the city woke to breaking news again. CHIEF. Kerr, under investigation for evidence tampering. Officers suspended pending review. Whistleblower veteran cleared of all charges. The tide had turned completely. Maya read the headlines aloud, laughing through tears. "You did it. You actually did it." Elijah didn't smile. He just stared at the words "cleared of all charges" for a long moment. "Justice," he said finally, "isn't victory. It's just the beginning of peace." She placed a hand on his arm. "So what now?" He looked at her, tired but resolute. "Now we make sure it never happens again." That evening, as the storm cleared, Elijah returned to the construction site where it had all started. The crew had put up a new sign, reopening under new management. He walked through the empty yard, boots crunching against gravel, and paused by the same spot where the officers once mocked him. The wind carried the faint hum of traffic, the smell of wet cement. He stood there, breathing in the silence, not victory, not relief, but something deeper. Freedom. In a city still divided, the truth had finally found its voice. And Elijah Warren, the soldier they tried to bury in lies, had become the man who made the walls fall.